Insights Bharat. I, Advocate Dhruv Gupta, welcome you all for today's session on the subject Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Pet Shop Rules 2018. Pets to be given human treatment in pet shops. During this pandemic situation, we all are facing many challenges, and many people have come out to help those in need in whatever way possible. However, there are many gray areas which went unnoticed by all of us, and one of such gray area are the pet animals kept in the pet shops, where these animals are literally treated like commodities and given extremely inhumane treatment. In order to create a deterrent law specific, ensure human handling and comfort to animals in pet shops, PCA pet shop rules were introduced. These rules are made to ensure that live animals sold as pets or as commodity receive proper care and stress-free human treatment so long as they are in possession of shopkeepers. There are many rules made under Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960, and one of such rules is Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Pet Shop Rules 2018. It is observed that live animals are often showcased, exhibited, and traded like commodities in pet shops or other shops selling animals alive. The ways in which many animals and birds are handled or managed are always idle. Many pet shops are established next to butcher shops where carcass of slaughtered animals, birds, are hung for the sale in full vision of live animals waiting to be sold. Cages are often crammed with animals or birds and exhibited outside the shops along with hoardings or in front of shops in open sunlight. So today Insights Bharat has organized this session with our honored guest speaker, Advocate Ambika Hiranandani, who also happens to be member of Maharashtra State Animal Welfare for creating awareness amongst people with regards to the existence importance of these rules. Now I would like to request my co-host Advocate Karan Shelke to show our viewers in what manner the pets are kept in the pet shops so that our viewers may understand the gravity of this issue. Over to you, Karan.
Thank you, Dhruv. I would now share some pictures with all of you of pet shops and the conditions in which pets are kept in pet shops. Is it visible?
No, not yet. Yeah, now it's gone.
Okay, great. So, like as you can see now, two of the monkeys are crammed up in a place where it is clearly seen that the place is quite unhygienic and there's no sign of any sanitation at all. There seems to be no edible food that is kept in front of monkeys as well.
Yeah.
Now, in this picture, you can see two exotic birds are cramped in a place where where they don't even have a place to spread their wings, literally. And like in Indian society, it's a status thing to have exotic birds. But as you can see, these birds don't have enough wingspan. They don't have enough place to do their natural activity. Now, in this slide, you can clearly see two people standing behind, clearly disgusted with the smell that is coming from the excreta, the unsanitized place. So it's clearly visible that there's a lack of awareness. The dogs are cramped up in so small places, and it's quite visible from the expression from the gentleman standing behind. In this slide, you can clearly see that two different species of animals are kept, and it has already been proved by WHO and various other agencies that if two animals have certain kinds of viruses or bacteria, there's a very high possibility that they are contagious and they can spread and mutate in some different virus. And the current pandemic is a clear example of that. Now, looking at these cute puppies cramped in a place, I mean, what kind of owner would be thinking when he goes to a pet shop and thinking that such puppies were actually crammed up in a place? It stuns their growth both mentally and physically. Now, if you're a cat owner, you must be aware that most of the cats have a lot of places to sleep. Like they don't have one set place where they relax and chill, right? So, like keeping these cats in such small cages is just what is wrong with current environment. Now I would be sharing the circular which has been issued by the government on 1st of May 2020. Is it visible?
Yeah, it's coming up.
Okay. So as you can see, this current circular talks about the situation of pet shops in the pandemic, because most of the pets were they were placed in such a situation where they had no access to food, water, or any kind of light, and so the government so the government issued a notification. The Ministry of Fisheries issued a circular in this regard, that all these animals were to be freed if they had no access to food or water. And further, they also stated that since the current lockdown has closed down all the pet shops, so if you want to open those pet shops, you need to have a registration, which has to be mandated by the state board. So this is the most recent circular that has been issued. So this was just to give our viewers a brief background about today's webinar. And now, without any further delay, I would like to introduce and welcome our guest speaker for today's session, Advocate Ambika Hiranandani. Miss Ambika Hiranandani graduated from the Government Law College, Mumbai, and has her LLM from the University College London. She has spent majority of the past decade doing public interest legal work. She is the member of Maharashtra State Animal Welfare Board and now also serves on the District Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Due to her affection and passion towards animals, she has been actively involved in the matters related to animal welfare and has made immense contribution in the field of animal welfare. We welcome you, ma'am. Now I hand over the platform to Advocate Ambika Hiranandani for our much awaited session. Over to you, ma'am.
Karan, Dhruv, Sneha, thank you so much for having me today. Many congratulations to your team at Insights Bharat, to my friend Sidvidya who helped you guys put this whole thing together. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for taking up this very important topic of pet shops. So, what I'm going to do is, rather than sort of making this a very boring law lecture, which I'm sure a lot of law students attend, I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible, explain the issue, the need for regulation, what the regulations kind of say, and what the average person can do to help animals in pet shops. And that will be the part that I focus on most. What each one of us can do to actually help an animal who we see who may be sick in a pet shop, or a pet shop that may be very cruel. So that's kind of the what I'll focus on most. Now, in India, we've had pet shops for years and years and years, right? What's happened is, at least since I started working for animals, I would notice that these animals were extremely cramped in pet shops. Sometimes there were cases in which, in little cages, there used to be like 30, 40, 50 birds. I remember one time in 2013, we were doing an inspection at a pet shop and we saw a big swelling in a little bird's stomach. And we thought, perhaps it was like a cancer or something like that. And then we found out, we called a veterinarian. The veterinarian said she was pregnant and the egg had gotten stuck there. So, that's how, and there was nothing that could be done at that point of time, according to that veterinarian. So basically, it's like, the cramped conditions that they keep the animals in. Many animals are kept together. Very often, small baby puppies are kept. So what happens is that the mortality rate amongst the animals are very high. It's a heartbreaking thing all around, right? Because it's like a small puppy is taken away from the mother when the puppy is maybe 2 weeks old, 7 days old, lives in a pet shop, perhaps dies in the pet shop. So there's heartbreak for the mother. It's sad for the baby. Then sometimes the family buys a sick animal and then the animal dies in their hands. So it's all around, it's an unregulated business in which there's cruelty and there's a lot of pain in the business, almost at every step of the way. Then the wildlife trade also, then sometimes, the pet shops actually act as a front for the wildlife trade. So the pet shops will publicly sell dogs, cats, birds, but behind the scenes, illegally, they'll sell star tortoises, different type of tortoises. There were cases in which we had heard about animals like Schedule 1 animals, like, rusty spotted kittens and things like that, which were being sold by the pet shops. So, it's like in it's like just in the front, you feel like you're just getting, dogs, cats, and kittens, and sometimes at the back, our wild habitats are also being plundered. And the thing is that this is a known statistic, which is that to kind of have one wild animal sold in a shop, 9 other animals die. Because to catch that wild animal, many other animals will die. We all saw David Attenborough's documentary recently where he spoke about how people wanted baby orangutans or baby, and when they were going after the babies, the adults would protect them. So people would just kill the entire family of the adults to get a hold of 2 babies. It's like that with all animals in the animal kingdom, because animals are just like us. So often the pet trade was fueling the wildlife trade. So as you can imagine, and then also where was the income going from the pet trade? If it's an unregulated, unlicensed shop, which is selling hundreds of animals a month, then where is the money going? You can imagine that there was serious need for regulation of this sector. So what happened was that there were certain rules that were introduced. These rules got held up for many years in the government, and then later these rules were passed. The Honorable Law Commission of India also gave a detailed report, in which it explained the cruelty that animal, I think it's report number 261, if I'm not wrong, which actually explains the tremendous cruelty that animals go through in pet shops. And then, with the, there was many NGOs that asked for it. A case was filed in the Delhi High Court seeking regulation of the pet shops. I was one of the lawyers in the case in the Delhi High Court that sought the regulation of the pet shops and the passing of the pet shop rules. And then after many years of activism, rescues, cases, finally the pet shop rules came in. Now, the thing is that in order to effect the pet shop rules, to really see them work, each one of us needs to be mindful of the rules, needs to understand the rules, and needs to do what we can to have the rules implemented. Now, the reason for this is that the animals don't know that these rules are there. So the puppy can't say, hey, you've taken me away from my mom at age 5. A bird can't say, hey, my cage is too small, I can't breathe, I don't have food to eat. They can't say that, okay, you've cramped too many of us in here, one of us is going to die soon. So because animals can't speak, because the environment can't speak, it becomes important for us to speak for them. So very quickly, I'm going to explain the rules to everyone who's tuned in, okay? So what is a pet shop? A pet shop is defined under Rule 2K. It's basically a place where pet animals are exhibited for sale. Now, how does a pet shop get registered? It's quite simple. And to make these rules extremely simple, there are forms attached for almost everything. So the pet shop owner needs to submit an application to the State Animal Welfare Board under Form 1. The State Animal Welfare Board registers the pet shop under Form 2. And they maintain a register of the pet shops. And then after that, within 3 months of receiving the application and giving the registration under I think it was, 1 second. So Form 1 is the application, Form 2 is the certificate of registration. So once that's done, within 90 days, basically, the State Animal Welfare Board has to cause the pet shop to be inspected by a veterinarian of the state government. So within 90 days, somebody appointed by the state government will go in and will check the pet shop, right? So after that, a pet shop will either be registered or it won't be registered. Now, this registration, once given, is valid for a period of 5 years, right? So then it brings us to Rule 6, which deals with accommodation, infrastructure, housing. So it talks about the flooring of the animals. So it has to be, it has to be small enough that their feet don't go through it, because so many times if it's such huge gaps and you have puppies who can barely walk on those things, the temperature needs to be okay. Sometimes there are pet shops without fans, without air conditioners, anything. It's just hot. The animals are cramped in there. Recently, when the COVID-19 lockdown was announced in the city of Bangalore, 7 days later, because of a high court order, they were able to go in and remove animals from a pet shop. So many of the animals had passed away. So it was very, very tragic. Then, aviaries where the birds are there, if they need to be properly ventilated. There needs to be, a drainage system, because what often happens with pet shops is that, you have cages on top of cages on top of cages. Sometimes you have birds on top of little guinea pigs, and then below the guinea pigs there are dogs. Below the dogs there is one duck and one chicken. So what happens is the fecal matter literally goes through the whole thing from one animal's food into the other animal's food. So these rules are extremely basic, and they explain how the animals can be kept in the pet shop. General care and maintenance: there has to be sufficient food, clean drinking water, enclosures in the aviary for sale. They're displayed, they're cleaned. Then where the accommodation is in a tiered system, they have to make sure that water and food doesn't go, the water, the food, the fecal matter, the dropping doesn't go from one cage to the other cage. So they have to make sure that only healthy animals are sold. Veterinary certificates are needed. Pet animals are not left in the pet shop at night without sufficient amount of attendance. Very often pet shop owners just lock the pet shop and they go, and the animals are there alone all night long. A pet shop should not display or house pregnant animals. As I had mentioned, the case of the pregnant bird, which is something I don't think I'll ever forget, because it was so sad to see. Then, these next set of regulations are very important, because they talk about the pet shop owner shall immediately report a suspected outbreak of zoonotic contagious disease or infection to the local authority or the SPCA. So it is very important when there is some sort of an outbreak, or they get a puppy that has rabies, you have to immediately inform. So whenever we just have to think very practically, what is important for animals? They are exactly like people, so they need air, they need ventilation, they need adequate space, safe living conditions, and medical care. Now, the reason for medical care is twofold. It's good for the animal, it's good for the family who adopts the animal, and it's also good for you and me, because tomorrow if there is an outbreak of a disease in a pet shop, it's going to affect the society at large, right? So then we move on to, the maintenance of records, which is very important. So the pet shop owners need to maintain a record of all the people who are buying animals from the pet shop, because very often, in the city of Mumbai, we even found a scam where people were going to the pet shops and they were buying animals, slaughtering them, and then eating them. For animals who were not available in other places. So if they were not one easily able to find ducks, they would go to Crawford Market, they would buy ducks, and then they would slaughter them. And these are cases that we found after so many repeated investigations, cases of cruelty, cases of complaints, cases of wildlife being sold over there. So these are the things that we became aware of after 7 to 8 years of repeatedly rescuing animals from the pet shops. If there are rules, if these rules are followed, then those cases won't take place, right? So then, now what it comes to, what is the non-compliance of these rules? If these rules aren't being followed, what can we do? This is the most important thing in the rules, if you ask me, right? See, we all understand that an application has to be submitted by the pet shop owner. We understand the State Animal Welfare Board has to give the registration. Then within 3 months, we understand that the State Animal Welfare Board has to inspect the shop, right? And then based on that, either they can give the registration or they cannot give the registration. If they don't give the registration, they can give the pet shop owner a notice and they have to rectify the things that are done. The option is also there to seal the pet shop and rescue the animals who are within the pet shops. So there are multiple options, but this, the non-compliance rule 9 is the most important rule if you ask me. It says, the state board may, upon receipt of a written complaint, inquire into the complaint or have the complaint inquired into by the local authority or the SPCA, right? So basically, this is where people like each one of us, like common citizens, normal people, this is how we can help the animals. Tomorrow, if we go out and we see that there's a pet shop, right? Now that I've explained the basis of the rules, we can all understand, okay, if we see 10 very small puppies crammed in a cage on the road in the heat, we know that's a violation, right? What do? Take a picture and send a letter to the State Animal Welfare Board. Now, how do you find out where is your State Animal Welfare Board? All you have to do is Google it. Google, where is my State Animal Welfare Board? If you're unable to find where your State Animal Welfare Board is in your state, or if they don't have a website, then send this letter to the Secretary of the Animal Husbandry Department of your state. It's a simple thing to do, a picture and a letter. And this must be sent, right? And then the Secretary of the Animal Husbandry Department will send it to the State Animal Welfare Board and tell the State Animal Welfare Board, now, these are the rules. You are the implementing authority. Implement them. Then, if during an inspection a pet animal is suspected to be sick or experiencing some kind of distress, then the inspector or any person authorized by the state board will give um, uh, in writing to give a certificate of ill health, may require the pet shop owner to provide medical attention to the sick animal and submit the report within 7 days post the inspection date. Now, for example, if these rules were there all those years ago, when we had to go as requested by the Animal Welfare Board of India to inspect the pet shops, we saw so many puppies, who were defecating everywhere, suspected parvovirus, the birds who were sick, animals who were, jaundice. We would have immediately been able to give in writing, during the inspection that this animal is not well, you have to provide veterinary care to the animal. So then the expense, now, one thing that becomes very interesting is who's going to bear the expenses. So the expenses that will be incurred for attending to any animal, they will be borne by the pet shop owner himself. He is the one who is doing the trade and he has to pay for it. The pet shop owner shall not, in the event of removal of any sick or otherwise distressed pet animal, be entitled to claim compensation from the state animal welfare board. Now, if I go tomorrow as a member of the state board, I find an animal is sick, then I don't have to be the one to, pay for the maintenance of the animals. Unfortunately, many years ago, these rules didn't exist, and when NGOs rescued animals, NGOs had to end up paying for the rehabilitation and the welfare of the animals. Then, if there are other violations, then the state board shall issue a notice to the pet shop owner to show cause within 15 days as to why his registration should not be cancelled. So, say, for example, if we notice that there's no ventilation in the shop, then a letter will be sent and he'll be given 15 days to show cause as to why his registration should not be cancelled. So, for example, in such a case, he can immediately, ventilate the place, perhaps purchase 2 new fans and send a letter to the state board that, look, this was your complaint, this was your grievance, and we managed to install these systems. We've cleaned up the trays. Say, for example, you're living next to a pet shop and you hear the animals screaming every night. And the reason why they're screaming is because there's nobody in the shop, or because they're cramped, or because there's no ventilation, or because they're not given food properly. You can immediately write to your state board. Your state board will have to authorize someone to go in and do an inspection. When the inspection is done, then, they'll have to send a show cause notice to the pet shop, and then the pet shop owner will have 15 days to actually rectify what has gone on there. If there's a particularly sick animal you spot in the pet shop, you can immediately write to your state animal welfare board and say, okay, there's this sick animal, you need to take action. The pet shop, the state animal welfare board will have to send their inspectors in, who they have to authorize. The inspectors are veterinarians who are government veterinarians, so they can actually go in immediately and do something for the animals who are in distress. And then if the state board is not satisfied with the response, the receipt, they can cancel the registration of the of the pet shop owner, and the pet shop owner has the right to appeal, right? So inspection, how the inspection has to be conducted, the inspectors can go at any reasonable point of time. They should have access to all the records. They can take pictures, they can make videos, exactly what I had said, basic, taking pictures, doing videos, and reporting by the pet shops, which is Rule 12, which is that the pet shop has to report to the state animal welfare board. And they have to maintain multiple registers. They have to maintain registers of the people who came in, who bought the animals. As I mentioned earlier, they have to maintain registers also of animals who died in the pet shops. They have to maintain registers of animals who were sick in the pet shop. So the point is that if you start thinking that animals have life, right? They shouldn't be treated badly. They shouldn't be meted cruelty. They should have access to basic healthcare, and the home where the animal has been sold to, since the animal is a living being and not a mobile phone. Tomorrow, even if you go to a mobile phone store, they'll be able to pull out a receipt and they'll be able to show you who purchased the mobile phone on a particular day, for example. But with animals, we don't have these we don't have these, we know the pet shop owner won't know who he sold a puppy to, who he sold guinea pig to. So they don't even know often. So there needs to be, a system. There needs to be record keeping. Puppies need to be microchipped. So basically what these rules seek to do is regulate the pet trade. So in a way that the pet trade carries on, but it carries on in a way that is ethical, in a way that in which the animals don't have to deal with cruelty, in a way that there is no risk to the public health, in a way that the family who is adopting the animal is purchasing the animal is able to purchase a healthy animal and not a sick animal, who is unwell, who is, going to die in their care and then end up breaking the family's heart, and, the animal will go through pain and torture. So it's basically simply regulating the rules. Now, this brings me to the most important part of what I'm going to say. See, we have to understand every district has a society for the prevention of cruelty to animals, right? You also have every city has a municipal corporation, right? And then every state is supposed to have a state animal welfare board. More often than not, the chairperson of the state animal welfare board is perhaps the minister of animal husbandry in that state. And so what we really need to do at this point of time is understand these three basic things: the municipal corporation, the SPCA, and the state animal welfare board. There are these three authorities, right? And under the pet shop rules, two authorities have a large role to play. One is the state animal welfare board, and the second is the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, which is often the authority that goes out and inspects the pet shops. Now, in my state, in our state of Maharashtra, our State Animal Welfare Board has issued directions to the SPCAs to keep a committee ready. Right? This committee will have one government veterinarian and one member of the NGOs who will go. They will go together, and they will and one member from the Mumbai municipal from the local corporation. So that's three members, right? Who will go in and they will inspect the pet shops. And then they will decide whether the pet shops are to be licensed or not licensed. And if complaints are received by the State Animal Welfare Board, they will be sent to the SPCAs, and then the SPCAs will go in and they will inspect the pet shops and they will check, are the pet shops okay, are they not okay? So we have to understand that there are these three levels, right? Now, what is our role? Our role in all of this is to ensure that we get a complaint across to the State Animal Welfare Board if we see that there's an animal sick who is in need of emergency care. Perhaps if the Animal Welfare Board is not immediately acting, then we have to immediately write to our local SPCA. If we are unsure who is the local SPCA, who we should get in touch with at the local SPCA, then we have to understand that the collector is the chairperson of the local SPCA. Write to the local SPCA saying, hey, this is happening. If we don't have any action at the State Animal Welfare Board level or at the SPCA level, then we must immediately call the police, show them a copy of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act and the pet shop rules, and inform them that, look, there is this violation and this violation, and you absolutely need to make sure that this animal is rescued. So the main thing is that while understanding these structures, which are extremely basic, we just need to be able to be persistent, make a complaint, and speak up. So if, for example, even the 5-10 people who, are a part of Insights Bharat, if you all decide as a group of young people that you all will take on your local area and you will make sure that the pet shops in your local area are registered, write the letters to your animal husbandry department, these pet shops exist, bring it to their notice, tell them that they aren't registered. Under the rules, the State Animal Welfare Board is the authority that needs to make sure that the pet shops are registered. So they will have to contact the pet shop owners, say, come on, register your pet shop. Now, actually, as per the rules, if the pet shop is not registered, the State Animal Welfare Board can send a notice, a show cause notice. Thereafter, if there's no response, the State Animal Welfare Board even has the power to seal the pet shop entirely. So, there are ways the authorities have the powers to take action, to regulate the shops, to rescue animals. If by chance there is a pet shop in which there has been a case of wildlife trafficking in the past, to have a license under the pet shop rules, the individual cannot have a previous conviction under the Wildlife Protection Act. So if, for example, there are cases in which, you are aware that there is a pet shop that is selling wild animals illegally, immediately you must contact the State Animal Welfare Board, contact your local police station, and contact the wildlife authorities to inform them of that, so that they ensure that the license of the pet shop is cancelled. So what we need is greater vigilance from members of the community. And by greater vigilance, I'm not saying that you have to go in and enforce the rules. No, you just have to be vigilant that should something negative be happening, should there be cruelty, should there be extensive exposure of the elements, do we see constantly sick animals in a pet shop, all we have to do is take it upon ourselves to write to the authorities, And if we don't get responses, we have the greatest tool. We can file an RTI, immediately file an RTI within, say, 2 weeks to 3 weeks. If nothing has processed, if there are sick animals and the animals continue to look sick, then all you have to do is file an RTI stating that I wrote to you on such and such date, stating that there was this pet shop. This pet shop is functioning illegally. The animals are kept in extremely bad condition. And ask if they've taken action or they haven't taken action based on your complaint. So, what we really need to do is do a reading of these rules, which are extremely simple. As I mentioned, there are very few steps, and the regulations are very basic. How animals are to be kept, veterinary access, license number displayed, very, very simple regulations, and just ensure that they are being implemented, and if the animals are being treated, they're being treated humanely. So that's all I have to say. I hope that whoever's been listening has any questions to ask me, and perhaps with the help of this talk, we're able to empower some young people to get out there and actually be able to make sure that the pet shops in their local area are regulated and registered.
That was great explanation, ma'am.
I didn't want to make it too long and go into every rule, because the thing is, it's all here, we can all read it. But what's more important for us is to understand that these rules exist. There is a state animal welfare board. There is an SPCA. It is their duty to regulate the shops, register the shops. It is their duty to rescue animals. Should animals in there be extremely sick, they have to go in. They have to give the pet shop owner a notice in writing immediately that provide attention to this puppy, provide attention to these 8-10 puppies. They have to go in and do it. So what we have to do really, is that it's easy to read the rules and understand what they are. What is more important than anything else is to be the person to say, okay, I've read these rules. I'm not going to keep it a purely academic, theoretical exercise. I am going to do something. And what am I going to do? All you have to do is take a picture, send a letter. Take a picture, send a letter, file an RTI. If you see an animal who's very sick and your SPCA, your local collector's office, so normally the chairperson of the local SPCA is the collector, the secretary of the local SPCA is the district deputy director. If they are not acting at that point of time, they are not doing anything to help the animals, you need to file an RTI as to what they've done on the basis of your complaint. And if they don't do anything, then you need to get out there and call the police immediately, right? So worst comes to worst, you can always call the police and call 100. The police are always there to help animals. So if nothing else works, that's our final lifeline. But our aim is not to let it get to that. Our aim is to work with people, work with the government, collaboratively, and create change. Because if you're the first person to work to have one pet shop get regulated, or have one pet shop that has perhaps sold illegal animals, pay the price for having done that, sold wildlife to actually pay the price for having done that, then everybody else will follow the regulation. Sometimes all it takes is for one person to stand up and say, look, these laws are not being implemented. I am going to make sure that they are being implemented. All people need to do is just be sending letters, filing RTIs, following up with authorities until they don't regulate the pet shops. And also, as we study human behavior, change takes a little bit of time, right, to happen. But once change happens, once systems are instituted, once there is a culture within people that you're not buying a pet as a gift or for fun or for 3 weeks, once there is a culture within people that you're buying a pet animal, you're going to keep this animal with you as a member of your family for many, many years. Once the pet shop owners also recognize that, okay, these animals are living beings, they need to be treated with respect, then in 3, 4, 5 years, these rules will just become a part of society, and it's how it will be business as usual. But for us to achieve that, young people mostly, people who are actually vigilant, walking around, looking at the pet shops, who happen to, catch their eyes, they happen to see something, they need to take action to do the right things. Understand that there is a government, understand that there is a setup, understand that there are regulations, understand that the rules have redressal mechanisms for the violations and actually exercise them. Speak for the animals. So that's pretty much my message today.
Ma'am, that was a much enlightening session, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, when we talk about pet shops under this rule, we see that online pet shops are also being included under the definition. So, how these rules are to be implemented, because the physical pet shops which we are able to see in our surrounding, we can notice those things that this particular rule is not being followed, or the pets are being crammed up into a cage. But whereas when the shops are online, so how these rules has to be implemented?
So, so you have to complain, right, to the SPCA of where the shop is located, as I mentioned. Or you need to complain to the State Animal Welfare Board of where the shop is located. It's not so difficult. Like in today's day and age, for example, if I find an Instagram account of a breeder who's selling puppies, that comes under the breeding rules. But if I find an Instagram account of a pet shop, for example, right, and now the pet shop is located in Navi Mumbai, right? I just have to put two and two together, print out the pictures, make a very basic complaint saying, "Dear sir, I came across this pet shop on Instagram on such and such day at such and such time. I have attached the pictures of the pet shop, and the violations that are going on there, and I request that action be taken under the pet shop rules. If you notice a sick animal, for example, like, there have been cases in which doctors have just seen pictures of animals and or even people, and they've been able to say, okay, this one has this problem, that one has that problem. Just by picture, doctors can tell sometimes, So if there's some insight, then all, like I said, for us to speak for the animals, you don't need to be the police. You don't need to be in the government. It helps, but you don't need to. You just need to be a vigilant citizen. So Google, where is the shop? How hard is it? Today on Google, everything is there. Then even once you Google where the shop is, how hard is it to Google the collector of a particular district, as I mentioned to you, who is the chairperson of the SPC. Now, once you Google who is the collector of the particular district, you should also send it to the State Animal Welfare Board. As I mentioned to you, all you do is Google State Animal Welfare Board Maharashtra. Now, if, for example, you can't find a website, I've already told you that often it is the minister who is the chair of the State Animal Welfare Board, and the secretary of animal husbandry has a position in my state of Maharashtra. The secretary of animal husbandry is also the secretary of the State Animal Welfare Board. So, mark a letter to him. So all you really have to do is be vigilant and bring it to the attention of the authorities, stating that, hey, this is here. Is it registered? If it's not registered, you need to register it. If it's registered, you need to rescue these animals that are over there. You've got the power. It is your duty under these rules. And sometimes if you know the corresponding rule, these rules are exactly 4.5 pages, very simple to read. You can pull out the corresponding rules. If you really want to make your notice, really flesh it out, you can state that, look, under Rule X, sub Rule Y, for example, there needs to be ventilation of the pet shops. I noticed that there were no fans, no air conditioners, and the owner locks up the shop and the animals can't breathe and there isn't proper food that's given. Then you can, find the corresponding rules, for example, over here, that this is a violation of rule this, and this is the situation. Such a complaint is 1 page. It'll literally be 1.5 pages, annex 3 pictures. Everybody has an email address today. It can be email, a hard copy, a letter can be sent. RTIs, if you're wondering, has action been taken or not? RTIs can be sent online. So literally, it takes nothing for us to save millions of lives. And you don't need to be a lawyer. You don't need to have a very special degree. You don't need to do anything. You just need to understand that, okay, there's a government authority whose job it is to regulate the pet shops. What is my job? My job is to make sure that they are doing their job. How will I do it? I will write to them. And if they don't listen to me, I will file an RTI. And if that doesn't work, then I will go to my local police and say, look, there's a sick animal. I've done all of this, still nothing has happened. And then you get the police to act and to rescue the animal.
Indeed, ma'am. Very well said. Ma'am, I can see that you're very optimistic about police action with respect to animal welfare. But let's say, can an NGO or a animal welfare organization conduct a raid in any pet shop or breeder property on allegations that there's some kind of cruelty going on there and can confiscate those animals?
So see what the thing with the pet shop rules in particular is that see they are rules in which the government authorities have been given the power to take action, right? And even an inspector, which let me read it out again to you. An inspector means a veterinarian of the state government authorized in writing by the State Animal Welfare Board or the SPCA, right? So the reason why the rules are there is to ensure that they are implemented by government authorities. See, now the thing is that when individuals go out and they sort of they sort of sort of have this attitude of, we can rescue the animals. I understand what that feels like, because when you see tremendous cruelty happening on an animal, then you immediately want to jump in and you want to do what you can. But the thing is that there can be allegations on the individual. It can lead to a very difficult situation. Unnecessary complications can come on. Often it'll be the animal who will suffer the most in the end, right? So my advice to animal welfare organizations is work with the government. The government is there to work with us. It's not hard to make the government work. All we have to do is write, send letters, meet our local representatives, and ensure that the work takes place. If there is urgent action required, we have to call up the police. You can call the police on 100, or you can go visit the local police station, ask the police to accompany you to rescue an animal, and immediately call the local, the police will also call the local district deputy director of animal husbandry. The local district deputy director of animal husbandry is also the secretary of the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. So what we have to do is we have to work with the government, not independently and not against the government. See, because we are part of a system, right? If you feel that you're not getting cooperation at a lower level, then take it higher, take it higher, take it higher. If you feel that you're not getting cooperation at any level, then send an RTI. If you're still not getting cooperation at any level, then you have to then create a group of 10 to 15 people, go to your local MP, go to your local MLA. So activism doesn't need to be in the field. It's not always a fight. That's not it. What we're doing is we're making the government regulate something, making the government do what they have to do anyway under the laws, the rules that the government has passed. So that is what actually makes sense, and that's a long-lasting approach. Because today, say for example, I, Ambika Hindan, I'm a very brave, foolhardy person. I go into pet shops and I bravely rescue all sorts of animals. Now tomorrow, if I, Ambika Hiranandani, go to move cities, what would happen to those animals who, sort of were sick in the pet shops after that? But if I work with my government, if I make my community around me aware that, guys, if you see a sick animal, then this is who you need to report it to. You need to write to your State Animal Welfare Board. You need to write to your SPCA. You need to make sure, get the number of your local District Deputy Director of Animal Husbandry. Get the number of your local animal husbandry vet. As I mentioned, in our home state of Maharashtra, the State Animal Welfare Board has appointed a team has told the SPCAs to appoint a team that will inspect the pet shops. And then they've even said that this team must be there to provide emergency care also, which the rules also provide for. So that's my point, right? So if you can, being brave and rescuing one animal, you only rescue that one animal. Then you also face, the risk that today, tomorrow someone may turn around and make allegations that you want that, you didn't actually rescue animals. Anything can happen, right? Because you're not the police. So it's always better to work with the government authorities. And once you work with the government authorities and they understand the system, they understand the rules, they get invested in implementing the rules, they are part of the work, then you can step away and implementation can continue to take place beyond you. As change makers, our role is not to do something once. Our role is not to teach someone our role isn't to do something once. Our role is to teach someone how to do something so it can happen for the next 50 years when we may or may not be there. So to any NGO, I would say first thing you should do is go meet with your local collector, the SPCA, bring these rules to their notice, walk around your district, perhaps the district is a bit big, but walk around, the area that your NGO works, make a list of the pet shops, write to the chairperson of the state animal welfare board, write to the state, write to the state animal welfare board saying, hey, here are these pet shops, here's this, are these pet shops regulated, this is the cruelty that's taking place. Follow up with your letter. When is the inspection team going to come to inspect the pet shops? So that's the kind of activism that we need today. We don't need the sort of field activism as much. Although I admire people who go out and rescue animals when animals are in distress, in keeping with the law, of course, and working with police authorities. But to regulate the pet shops today, what we need much more is citizens like you and me who work with the government to regulate the pet shops. So, for example, in Mumbai, on the 5th of November, we will be having online trainings with the pet shops. That in case they are opening now, they must first immediately get themselves registered. Because as the notification you read out clearly said that no pet shop can open unless they are not registered. So what we are doing is we are working with the pet shops that they understand the rules. So one day we will be explaining the regulations to them, and on the next day we will be expecting their requests under Form 1 to seek registration. Any other questions?
Yeah, ma'am, there's one more question. Ma'am, when we talk about microchip puppies has to be sold in shops. So what is this microchip technology, and how is it helpful for the animals?
So I
And
think
tracking of the animals, basically.
well, I don't. It's not like a radio collar, but from what I understand, a microchip, you kind of know where the animal is or what the number of that animal is. So it's kind of like you identify the animal and it needs a microchip reader. See, all these things are important because we have to understand that when we are it's like our iPhones, for example, even have a unique number. Like even your phone has a unique number. But the thing is, our animals have no unique identification. You can say this puppy was sold, now here's this puppy, now here's that puppy, and you don't even know any better. But if there's record keeping leads to accountability. Accountability means people will comply with the laws. So that's why there needs to be record keeping and accountability. And also accountability to make sure where did the animal go. They should be aware. I'm not saying that then animal welfare organizations need to run and figure out where the animals went. No. There's no need for any of that. But there should be due record. Tomorrow if the person who even were to purchase a puppy, there's some problem, there's a health issue, they can go back to the store. The store can say, oh yes, this is the animal that you got from me. Say there was a particular health problem which could be a contagious problem, and you inform them that, look, okay, my puppy is sick with this, then they can immediately take care of the other pup. So I'm just saying that we need to make sure that there's record keeping and there's accountability, because accountability will lead to compliance with the laws. Compliance with the laws will lead to less cruelty. So that's it.
Yes, ma'am. So we have a viewer question, ma'am, and also Sidvidya ma'am sends her appreciation. So we have a message from Dipti Jagyani. How does one go about reporting neighbors who have bought parakeets? Very sad to see them in that tiny cage kept near the windowsill.
So for that, Dipti, you need to call your wildlife authorities and you will need to alert them about that. So if you send a written complaint to your local wildlife office, they will take action on that particular issue. And it's not very difficult to figure out where is your nearest wildlife office. All you have to do is Google it and send a letter in that there are parakeets, there are so many parakeets there over here. The parakeets will be confiscated, and then it's the job of the wildlife department to rehabilitate the wild animals, which the wildlife department has multiple rescue centers, which also NGOs are working with the wildlife department to develop capacity of the rescue centers so that the animals can be rescued and they can be rehabilitated in the wild, and they'll be rehabilitated appropriately. Actually, the whole bird trade is the most cruel thing in the world. We're all sitting at home in a lockdown and we're not able to go anywhere and meet our friends. And for the poor birds, that's their whole life, just living in a cage.
And there's one question. prior to these pet shop rules, what was the law in force which regulated the sale of pets and
Why?
exotic animals?
So there was nothing.
There was nothing.
The only regulation was under Section 11 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. For exotic pets, India has signed a convention called the CITES, which is the Trade in Endangered Species. So, there were certain species that were sold, not sold. It was regulated by the Director General of Foreign Trade, whether those animals came in legally or not. But largely, there was really nothing to ensure their welfare once they came in, short of Section 11 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, which basically details what type of cruelty can't be committed on animals, right? But my point is, even that's the thing is that what these rules do is that they define it. They say this is how big the cage needs to be. Because what is small for me may not be small for you. And if it's not small for you and for the bird, what I'm saying is appropriate may not be appropriate. So that's why the rules have been passed by the ministry after due consideration, publication, taking into people's, everybody's feedback, and then the rules were passed. So I'm a big fan and believer that we need to work collaboratively. We need to work collaboratively. We need to work with people, because there was a time when there was no regulation and now there is regulation. So if we are able to even work with pet shop owners, explain the regulations to them, there are ways in which even people can come around and work with us. So I'm a big believer in working collaboratively. I understand that this is behavior change. It may take some time for it to, be fully in effect in my home state in Maharashtra, but I'm at least proud to say that we have begun with implementation of the rules. We are training pet shops, starting the 5th itself. We had all the trainings in the state of Maharashtra scheduled across the state in the month of April. But then because of lockdown, we were not able to do that. But now the trainings will start again. So while activists are training pet shop owners, it would be very good to have an army of people who care enough to report non-compliance. We don't need an army of people to go out there and start stealing animals from pet shops. We need an army of people who are there with their pen and their paper and their phone camera, and if they see something wrong, they are writing to the authorities and they're making the authorities take action.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I have a question. So, in urban areas, there is a growing appreciation for therapy animals, and many organizations offer their services of providing these kind of services to people. Now, if it is a business, then can such organizations be brought under the umbrella of pet shop rules?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. I don't know. I have to really have a think about this myself, because the only things that are excluded from the pet shop rules are animal shelters or animal welfare organizations. So if it's a welfare organization, then perhaps that won't be a part of it. Any other facility or establishment that operates for the welfare of animals and that is not engaged in commercial activities such as sale and purchase. So we'll have to kind of see what is the body that is doing this therapy animal work, but if they are, and what's interesting
I
is
think those are mostly NGOs, I think, and some private organizations.
so if it's an NGO, then it doesn't come under the definition, of a pet shop, because they're not selling the animals per se, right? If they're selling the animals, then it comes under the definition of a pet shop. But if they're not selling the animals, then it doesn't come under the definition of pet shop. But see, there's a basic standard of having a therapy animal, having a guide dog, even our stray animals, our stray dogs, they always say are the best guard dogs. They're so fiercely loyal. So I mean, to work with an animal so that the animal can be a contributing member of the family. Like for example, I tell you, even in my house, we have rescue animals, and before even we know somebody's coming, our rescue animals start barking. So there's nothing wrong with animals being a part of the family in that way. Guide dogs. It's really amazing how animals and people can work together. But there is a certain basis for what is cruel and what isn't cruel. And as long as the parameters of cruelty are not being contravened, I think the relationship between somebody who is unable to see and their guide dog is one of the most beautiful relationships. Should we continue with the next question?
Ma'am, there's a viewer question. Um, there's a viewer question. Mr. Prashant Ulthur is asking, if we file a complaint against shops selling birds, will the shop be shut and birds be rescued? How will they be rehabilitated?
Okay, so Prashant, this is a bit of a, so this is what I had addressed in my message earlier, which is that if you if you see cruelty being committed, then you have to immediately write to your state animal welfare board, and you have to inform them that, hey, there is this cruelty going on, and then the state animal welfare board has to, identify an inspector. The inspector has to go in and inspect the place, and then the inspector can give a report. So, for example, if the pet shop is not registered, then they have to take action. If it is registered, I'm sorry. Sorry, excuse me. I'm sorry. So if the shop is not registered, if the shop is registered, then the shop owner has to be given a show cause notice to show why the shop to seal the shop. Then what has to happen is that at that particular point of time they have the power to seal the shop, and even aside from sealing the shop, they can rescue the animals and they give them to an animal welfare organization. So basically there is provisions, and as I had mentioned, all of this comes under Rule 9. So Rule 9, as I had mentioned, is the most important rule, because that is the rule under which you can make a complaint to your SPCA and to your state animal welfare board and inform them. They have to send the inspectors in. Action will vary depending on whether the shop is registered or the shop is not registered. Animals who are sick and unwell can immediately be seized, sent to animal welfare organizations for treatment. The person who has to pay for this treatment is not the government, not the animal welfare organization, not the person who complains, but it has to be the pet shop owner, because that is his property. He is the one profiting out of that property. According to the rules, it has to be the pet shop owner who has to pay for the treatment. So this is exactly what I had mentioned, to what the kind of crux of my talk was, and what I had mentioned was the most important rule, which is rule number 9, which is for non-compliance of the rules. So either a shop is operating illegally, it's not registered, or if it is registered, then cruelty is being committed to the animals in the shop. So I hope I've satisfactorily answered that question.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, we have another viewer question. Anuradha P. Rao asks, is there any law to regulate the pet food quality? And if not, whom to complain? It's a very specific question.
I'm not sure who regulates pet food. I know that Food Safety and Standards Authority regulates human food. I'm unsure how pet food is regulated, to be honest. I guess I could check that up, and Anuradha let you know. Where have you seen sub-quality pet food being served to animals?
I mean, it might be that some, the residue or some kind of meat that is not consumable, that kind of food might be served. She might have some experience regarding that.
Are you talking about the food that's served to animals in the pet shops? Because if she's talking about food that's served to animals in the pet shop, then the pet shop rules very clearly provide if it's for animals. So see, so if we see rule number 7, sub rule 2 clearly A2A clearly says that sufficient food of a type consistent with the dietary requirements and age of the pet animal intended for sale should be provided to them. Clean drinking water is available to the pet animals also. Vessels should also be provided. So basically, there are rules for the sort of general maintenance of the animals, but what's interesting to note is that, for example, like perhaps if what she's trying to say is that the birds are being fed like a particular feed which is not optimal, or there is a more optimal feed out there. I don't think there is any particular regulation that details exactly what is the right type of food, but the rules do say that the right type of food needs to be fed to the animals. But that is extremely important, that animals are fed what they need to be fed. For example, when people even sell turtles and things, those types of animals, we have to understand that when the right living condition is so important for these animals, because sometimes some animals only survive in like a salty water. There are some animals who only survive in like a fresh water. So these things are very important for us to understand, to provide the animals the right living conditions. Otherwise, they do actually end up passing away. Many years ago in 2013, when we rescued animals from Crawford Market, of the police rescued animals based on some information that our NGO had gathered, we actually went out and we found that all of the turtles were kept in drawers at the pet shops. So it was very important for the right living conditions to be given to the animals.
I think Anuradha just pointed out some lacuna in the law, like there hasn't been any certain criteria that has been mentioned in the
Yeah.
maybe.
They don't clearly say exactly what type of food, but they say that
Yeah,
good food for the animal needs to be provided. So, yeah, maybe that is an important thing. Anyway.
Ma'am, there is a viewer question from Mr.
Yeah.
Durgesh. Ma'am, there is a viewer question from Mr.
Okay. Then
Durgesh.
Anuradha said something in FB, something. Someone said the dog got ill because some company manufactured food. So I think that would be perhaps like a consumer complaint that would need to be filed, right? Perhaps that would perhaps come under the consumer. I I don't know what exact food regulation is there for pet food, but definitely under the Consumer Protection Act there is action that can be taken.
Ma'am, there is one viewer question. Mr. Durgesh Thakur is asking, what is legal liability of customer who buys from illegal pet shop or the pet shop which is not having a registration under this rule?
So, under these rules, there is no legal liability on the person, but there is a huge moral liability. You need to make sure that a pet shop from which you're buying an animal is registered, and if the pet shop is not registered, then don't buy. Because I think National Geographic started this campaign, when we were very young, when we were 9 or 10 years old. It was called when the buying stops, the killing will too. So it's very simple, right? When we stop buying animals, people will stop putting them there. So the whole idea of going to a pet shop to buy an animal, why do you need to? There are so many animals in shelters and in homes and all of that who need to be adopted. Why can't you go and rescue them and sort of take them in? But say, for example, somebody insists on buying animals from a pet shop and that's what they've decided to do, then it's at least your moral responsibility to make sure that the pet shop is registered. And it's your moral responsibility for two reasons. It's your moral responsibility towards the animal, and it's your moral responsibility towards your family. Because if a pet shop is registered, they mandatorily have to keep records. If they mandatorily have to keep records, then they will be. They also have to have a veterinarian certificate. If they have a veterinarian certificate, that means you're purchasing a healthy animal. They have to have veterinary access. If they have registered themselves, it means they've taken the trouble to study the rules. They understand that they are accountable. Also on the microchipping point, one thing you said which just struck me is that, years ago, somebody had purchased a puppy from a pet shop and the puppy fell sick, and then they took the puppy back to the pet shop and the pet shop said, sorry, you didn't buy this dog from me. And I remember this case, maybe it was about 10 years ago, when somebody called me up and sought my help with this particular case. So, that's another thing. If all the puppies are microchipped, then the pet shop owner can't turn around and say, no, I didn't give you this dog. So, like I said, it creates accountability, which is very important.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I have a question. So recently, our Prime Minister gave a speech in which he encouraged people to pet Indian dogs as they are more acclimatized to Indian weather. So, like, do you think pet shops keeping foreign dog breed is a torture on them, as they might find it difficult to sustain in Indian climate? Like, do the
I mean,
guidelines are,
I think it's so now it's not illegal to keep foreign breeds, but is it immoral? I think it is. Is it unethical? Yeah. Is it bad for the animals? Yeah. Is it bad for the home? Yeah. For all these people going out and buying these fancy dogs with long hair,
Exotic dogs, yeah.
and then there's hair all over your house. You get a fit Indian dog, there's no hair in your house. They're the perfect size. They're not too small, they're not too big, they're perfect size. They're agile, they're fit, they barely fall sick. Your veterinary bills are less. All the rescue animals who my family, I'm not even talking about big shelters who are dealing with hunt, I'm talking about my simple family of 3 people. All the rescue animals we've had who were pedigree, we have raked up huge veterinary bills, taking them to the vets and getting their complicated treatment done, whether it's a spinal issue or it's this or that. But my Indian dogs never happen. They've lived like really healthy lives.
Ma'am, there is one question. Uh, Ma'am, there is one question. What is the quantum of punishment for running the pet shops without registration under the rule?
So the
And in your view, is it
So
sufficient?
the punishment is the possibility that the shop may be sealed, right? So the person may go totally out of business, right? There is the possibility of the shop being sealed. The powers are there with the enforcement authorities to give a show cause notice and seal the shop if there is violation of the rules, and not only if there's violation of the rules, if the shop is not registered also. So I don't think there is any great punishment. There is any greater punishment than having your whole business being stopped, subject to it not being registered. So I think that is adequate. And again, like I had mentioned, the main thing is that people need to get out there and they need to work to implement the regulations. Now, if you're implementing if you're implementing the regulations, then that is sufficient. The regulations are strong, they're very good, they just need implementation.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I have a question, but you might give a contrary answer to it. But so the question is, like, many pet shop owners are concerned that the conditions that are being prescribed in the guidelines are according to international standards, and they are not aligned with the Indian situation. And especially considering the COVID situation, many owners might be reluctant to invest such kind of expenditure, especially in cities like in metro cities. So, like, what is your opinion regarding this? Is it the international standard side is right, or should there be a Indian situation?
So it's not about Indian situation or international situation. The thing is, we're dealing with living beings. So if you ask me as a welfare person, I'll think that the rules are not strong enough. But for there to be trade and for people to be able to buy animals, there are these very basic standards have been set. And the only thing that it does is it changes the paradigm, right? So rather than having selling birds for X amount because you've kept 40 birds in a cage and 20 of them have gone home and died at people's homes, which is what happens, you're selling maybe 20 animals, but you're selling 20 healthy animals who are going to someone's house who are living. We have to look at the whole cost, right? The cost to the person buying. What's the use if somebody goes and they purchase an animal, 8 puppies are crammed in a cage. Now, according to the rules, you can't put 8 puppies in that cage, you can only put 2, for example. Then, if somebody was to go and rescue, if somebody was to go and purchase one of the 2 puppies, if the puppy has, sort of healthy, inoculated, vaccinated, doctor's certificates and registration, all of that is there, then the person who is buying the puppy is also saving money. Otherwise, you pick up one of those 8 puppies, one of those comes with parvovirus. A medicine for parvovirus is so expensive, then the person who buys the puppy may buy the puppy for 20,000 rupees, and then you end up spending 50,000 rupees on medication for the puppy. Then your puppy is sick and trembling for its whole life. There are 500 different problems that continue with the puppy. Then what's the point, right? The whole point is we have to understand that you're not selling a machine. Even to sell machines, even to sell cars, there's so many regulations for the factory, for what can be sold, for what can't be sold, quality control, warranty, this thing, that thing. The only thing is that they don't have their regulations are on quality control. Only they don't have the regulations that we do, that you can't keep them cramped. You have to do that. But for so many devices that are sold, they need to be kept cool, or they won't work. So that's when people keep them cool. My point is, we have to view animals and understand that they are living beings. So you have to keep them in a basic way, so that even the person who's buying them is buying a living being. So that animal actually lives with them and doesn't go there, fall sick, and die in the next 2 weeks. So essentially, these rules are protecting the pet shop owners, they're protecting the pets, and they're even protecting the people who are buying the animals.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am will only be taking few questions now, considering we are putting too much strain on your throat.
Yeah, it's going to be the end. I've just coughed so much.
Yeah, ma'am, there is this question which is, hello. Yeah, ma'am, I'm audible.
Yeah.
Ma'am, there is this question which is mostly raised by the pet shop owners, that once the animals are confiscated from them, those
Hmm.
animals are sent to animal welfare organizations or
Mhm.
centers which
Hmm.
never comply with any of the provisions under this rule. So, in your view, is it justified towards those animals who are confiscated from the pet shops?
No, but see, pet animal welfare organizations don't need to comply with these regulations, right? Because they are, see, we have to understand, one is a foundation, an NGO, which is not profiting, and one is a for-profit NGO. One is a for-profit organization. So the regulations for both have to be different. But if there are non-profits, I mean, I don't really understand, like, what is there a non-profit that is ill-equipped that is handling the animals, or a non-profit that perhaps doesn't have the right medical care? Is that the question?
Yeah, basically the question is that they do not have proper medical care,
So
and then
if the non-profit doesn't have medical care, then they shouldn't take the animal, no?
and even the spaces are not properly, most of the time the animals are crammed up even in such
Then the
welfare
non-profit
organizations.
shouldn't take the. See, non-profits are burdened. The pet shop owners, they're out of choice. The non-profit is there because nobody else is there. So they are burdened, you know. So but no non-profit will, even a non-profit, if they're cramped, it's because they have been pushed to take more and more and more and more sick animals. Like any NGO. When we talk about homes that are even there for women who have nowhere to go. You know what I'm saying?
Is there some connectivity issue?
Yeah, I
Uh,
hello. I think there's some problem with ma'am's connection.
yeah. Viewers, just give us 2 minutes till we fix the problem. Thank you. Viewers, we have forwarded the circular link in the comment box. So if you want the circular details and what all the law says about the pet rules and what are the conditions that are prescribed, especially in COVID times when a lot of pet shops are operating illegally and a lot of animals are cramped up inside. So please make sure that you check out the circular because it's really important and it'll create a lot of activism amongst all the Indian citizens.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my internet went off.
No worries, ma'am.
We are already, ma'am, at the ending of the webinar almost. I think we are taking up the last question now.
Okay, this is the last question, ma'am. Anuradha P asks, animals are being used in military like dogs, camels, horses, etc. How their retired life is secured in our laws? It's out of context, but if you can shed some light on it.
So I'm not exactly sure, but I think there were some rules passed. Like I think at some point there were. I'm not exactly sure what the retired life of all the these animals is. I'm not exactly sure. In some places, I know that there were cases in which the animals were disposed. I know there are some cases in which they were given away to the local community. But I think it's really important for wherever animals are used that there is a good retirement plan for the animals. For many of the cases, animals who are used, like the donkeys and horses and all, they're often used by they borrowed them from the local population and given them like a sort of certain amount of money and things like that. So it's like so I'm not exactly sure what the case is in different spaces, but I know for a fact that the police dogs get adopted out. That's what happens with the police dogs in at least in Mumbai and in Maharashtra, the police dogs get adopted.
That's actually really wonderful, and even the community gets back so well-trained military dogs. I mean, they should
Yeah.
be glad that they got.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so this interactive session has been extremely informative, and we believe
Thank
that
you.
our viewers would find it useful. If you liked our today's session, you may follow Insights Bharat on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I would like to invite all of you for our next session of Insights Bharat on the subject of Farm Bills 2020, a boon or bane, scheduled on 17/10/2020 this Saturday. Don't forget to mark your calendars. And lastly, I would like to thank Advocate Ambika Hiranani and
Thank
our
you so
viewers
much
for
for
joining
having me.
Insights Bharat. Thank you,
Thank you.
and becoming part of our collective initiative to bring social awareness. So, Insights Bharat will
Obviously.
be back on 17th October, Saturday, with a session on Farm Bills 2020. Stay tuned. Jai Hind.
Thank you.
Jai Hind.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank
Thank you
you,
so
ma'am.
much, ma'am.